Most people think finding a black diamond begins with luck. Experienced prospectors know better. Because luck rarely finds extraordinary gemstones, evidence does. A black diamond doesn't announce itself. It doesn't sparkle from the ground. It doesn't look like the diamonds in jewelry stores. In fact, some of the roughest, darkest stones are the easiest to ignore, and that's exactly why they're so fascinating. The real search doesn't begin when you pick up a black rock. It begins long before that, with the landscape, the rivers, the gravel, and the quiet clues that nature leaves behind. Because every valuable gemstone has a story, and every story leaves evidence. The question is, would you recognize that evidence or walk right past it? In this documentary, we'll explore the clues experienced prospectors look for, why black diamonds are so often mistaken for ordinary stones, and how understanding the landscape can completely change the way you search. Because finding a black diamond isn't about having better luck, it's about asking better questions. And sometimes, the greatest discovery begins with the stone everyone else ignored.
What if the rarest stone in front of you looked like the least important one? What if the rock everyone else ignored, the one half buried in dirt, dark enough to seem worthless, rough enough to seem ordinary, was actually a diamond? Not the kind people imagine. Not the bright, sparkling, crystal-clear diamond from jewelry store windows. Not the diamond that flashes across a display case and practically shouts for attention. Something darker, something heavier, something that doesn't sparkle first, but makes the right person stop. Because out in the wild, one of the strangest diamonds on Earth can sit quietly among broken stone, dust, gravel, and black rock fragments, and almost nobody will notice it. And that should bother every gemstone hunter. Because if a black diamond can hide in plain sight, how many have already been missed? How many were kicked aside? How many were dismissed as just another black stone? How many were picked up for a second, then dropped, because they didn't look expensive enough to deserve a second look? That is the trap. Most people don't miss black diamonds because they aren't looking. They miss them because they're looking for the wrong thing. They're looking for sparkle. They're looking for obvious beauty. They're looking for a treasure that behaves like treasure. But nature doesn't always reward expectation. Sometimes the most fascinating stones on Earth don't announce themselves with brilliance. Sometimes they hide behind darkness. Sometimes they look awkward, stubborn, even ugly at first glance. Sometimes they disappear so completely into the landscape that only one kind of person notices them. The person who knows what doesn't belong. And that is what this video is really about. Not fantasy, not wishful thinking, not pointing at every black rock and calling it a diamond. This is about learning how to see what most people miss. Because spotting a black diamond before anyone else does is not about luck. It's not about magic. And it definitely isn't about waiting for something to sparkle. It's about understanding how nature hides value. It's about recognizing the difference between a stone that is merely dark and a stone that feels strange in all the right ways. A surface that reacts differently to light. A texture that looks tougher than it should. A shape that refuses to behave like the common lookalikes around it. A presence that feels denser, quieter, more controlled, as if the stone is keeping a secret. And once you understand that, you'll never look at rough black stones the same way again. Because the next one you pass in the field might not be ordinary at all. It might be the one everyone missed. To understand why black diamonds are so easy to overlook, the first thing you have to do is erase the picture most people carry in their minds when they hear the word diamond. That picture is wrong. For most people, a diamond means brilliance. A diamond means light. A diamond means clean transparency, bright reflections, sharp flashes, and the kind of sparkle that instantly separates it from everything around it. That mental image is powerful, but in the wild it can be dangerous. Because if you are expecting a rough black diamond to behave like a polished white diamond, you are already setting yourself up to miss it. A black diamond in nature does not necessarily give you the signals your brain expects. It may not look delicate. It may not look refined. It may not even look beautiful in the traditional sense. In rough form, it can look dark, opaque, irregular, rugged, heavy in character, almost primitive. And that is exactly why it gets ignored. Imagine a rough, sunlit patch of ground near broken rock and mineral debris. Maybe a slope near exposed stone. Maybe an old weathered area where erosion has scattered fragments across the surface. Most people scan quickly. Their eyes are naturally pulled toward anything bright, colorful, translucent, or instantly dramatic. A green crystal catches attention. A reddish fragment stands out. A piece of quartz flashes in the sun. Even a metallic-looking mineral can pull the eye. But a black diamond, it may sit there in silence. No dramatic sparkle. No obvious invitation. No polished face. No clear look at me moment. Just a dark stone that somehow feels more serious than the others. That is why beginners fail. Because beginners chase attraction. Experts chase contradiction. A beginner asks what looks valuable. An expert asks what doesn't fit. That difference may sound simple, but in gemstone hunting, it changes everything. The best finders are not the people who are most excited. They are the people who are most disciplined. They know that rare stones often hide behind ordinary appearances. They know that the eye can be fooled by beauty. And they know that some of the most important discoveries begin not with certainty, but with discomfort. A stone that feels slightly wrong. A rock that seems too dense. That handles light in a way that doesn't match the rest. A black fragment that should be boring but is. That discomfort is often the beginning of real discovery. So let's start with the first clue that matters more than most people realize. Not sparkle, not color, not shape, light behaviors. Because if you expect a black diamond to dazzle you, you will probably walk right past it. But if you learn to watch how a stone responds to natural light, you start seeing things most people never notice. An ordinary dull black rock often reacts in a very predictable way. Sometimes simply dark with no real personality under light. But occasionally, a rough black crystal will do something different. It won't explode with brilliance. It won't throw rainbow fires. It won't behave like polished jewelry. Instead, it may hold light. That's the best way to describe it. The surface may show a restrained, heavy kind of luster. Not flashy, not glamorous, controlled. Sometimes it looks slightly oily. Sometimes subdued. Sometimes faintly metallic from certain angles. Sometimes almost greasy in a way that feels dense rather than slick. And that matters. Because experienced gemstone hunters often notice not just what a stone is, but how it behaves. A stone that absorbs light too completely can look dead. A stone that reflects it too glassily may point you in another direction. But a stone that seems to carry light in patches, holding it back rather than releasing it, can be deeply interesting. Now this is important, that alone proves nothing. And this is where many people make expensive mistakes. One clue is not a conclusion. One clue is an invitation to investigate. That rule will protect you more than almost anything else in the field. Because the moment people want a stone to be rare, they start forcing evidence. They see one promising feature, and suddenly the imagination takes over. That is exactly how misidentification happens. A real gemstone hunter has to resist that temptation. You are not there to prove yourself right. You are there to let the stone tell the truth. And when it comes to black diamonds, the truth is usually subtle. The second major clue is texture. This is where the stone begins to reveal its character. A rough black diamond often gives off a very specific visual impression: resistance. Not softness, not fragility, not glassy elegance. Resistance. It can look irregular, compact, and stubborn. Its surface may appear rough, tough, and compressed, as though it formed under unimaginable force and never forgot it. That impression matters more than many beginners realize. Because some stones look weak, some look brittle, some look layered, flaky, or fragile. Some look like they could break the wrong way with very little effort. But many truly significant crystals, even when rough, carry a kind of internal authority. They look like they survived something. Black diamonds born under extreme pressure deep within the earth often carry that visual message. They don't always look elegant. They look enduring. That doesn't mean every tough-looking black stone is valuable. Far from it. Nature is full of hard, dark, convincing lookalikes. But if the stone looks too soft, too flaky, too glassy, too neatly layered, or too obviously striated in the wrong way, you should become more skeptical, not less. And that brings us to one of the most important clues of all. Not what the stone is, but what it is not. This is where a huge number of beginners go wrong. Because when people find a dark crystal in the field, one of the first fantasies that enters the mind is black diamond. And one of the most common stones behind that fantasy is black tourmaline. Black tourmaline is probably one of the greatest tricksters in this entire conversation. Why? Because it can look dramatic. It can look important. It can look rare to the untrained eye. And in rough form, it often looks exactly like the kind of thing a hopeful beginner wants to believe is valuable. But black tourmaline often has habits that betray it. It commonly forms in long, elongated crystals, column-like, directional, or stretched. And perhaps most importantly, it often shows visible lengthwise striations, those natural grooves or lines running along the surface. That pattern is one of the biggest giveaways. A black diamond in rough form usually does not present itself that way. Instead of looking long and structured, it often appears more compact, more blocky, more irregular, more massive in its presence. It may not look organized the way tourmaline often does. It may look less like a crystal that grew in a clear direction, and more like a dark, pressure-forged survivor that refuses to explain itself. That single comparison can save a beginner from one of the most common mistakes in gemstone hunting. Because if you don't know the common imposters, you will keep falling in love with the wrong stones. And black tourmaline is only the beginning. Hematite can create confusion too, especially when it appears dark gray to nearly black with a metallic or semi-metallic sheen. To an excited beginner, that can feel promising. Obsidian is another trap. Glossy black, visually striking, especially when fractured. But obsidian often carries a glassy character that feels very different from the dense, resistant personality of a black diamond. Magnetite can mislead people as well, particularly when darkness and reflectivity are doing all the emotional work in the observer's mind. And then there are the countless ordinary black stones that are not famous, not collectible, not rare, but still fully capable of triggering the imagination. That is why discipline matters more than excitement. Because gemstone hunting is not just about finding treasure. It is about surviving your own wishful thinking. And that may be one of the hardest lessons in the field. The moment people hear black diamond, something dangerous happens psychologically. Every dark stone starts to feel more interesting. Every reflective patch feels like a clue. Every unusual edge becomes a possible fortune. That is not observation. That is projection. And if you let that take control, the field will humble you quickly. Real finders learn a different habit. They do not ask, could this be rare, first. They ask, what would disqualify it? That question is powerful because it forces you out of fantasy and into evidence. Does it look too elongated? Does it show strong surface striations? Does it fracture like glass? Does it feel too soft in character? Does the surface behave more like something common? Does the environment make no sense for what you hope it is? Those are the questions that protect you. And if the stone survives those questions, then it earns your attention. Not your certainty, your attention. That distinction matters. Because one of the most professional habits you can develop as a gemstone hunter is this: never fall in love too early. A black diamond is rare enough that your imagination will always want to rush ahead of your evidence. Don't let it. A real discovery rarely begins with confidence. It begins with hesitation. A pause, a second look, a refusal to dismiss something too quickly. That's the moment that changes everything. And that moment becomes much stronger when you stop focusing only on the stone and start focusing on the environment. This is where many beginners lose the plot completely. They become obsessed with the object in their hand and forget the ground it came from. That is a mistake, because no gemstone exists in isolation. Every stone belongs to a geological story. And if the story around it makes no sense, the guess probably doesn't either. This is why skilled prospectors pay attention to more than the crystal itself. They watch the surrounding rock. They notice the deposit type. They study the terrain. They think about erosion, transport, concentration zones, and the kinds of materials that naturally occur together. A stone that looks interesting in the wrong setting becomes less convincing. A stone that looks ordinary in the right setting becomes far more important. That is a massive mindset shift. Beginners focus on the object. Experts focus on the context. And that difference is often the line between fantasy and real field intelligence. Ask yourself, what kind of rock is around me? What kind of mineral environment is this? Does this place even make sense for the type of stone I'm hopping to find? Is this material local, or could it have been transported? Am I looking at random surface scatter, or is there a pattern? These questions may not feel as exciting as the idea of finding a diamond, but this is the exact kind of thinking that creates real discoveries. Because a stone is never just a stone. It is evidence. And the ground is part of the evidence too. Now here is something even more fascinating about black diamonds. Part of what makes them so compelling is not just rarity. It's personality. A classic transparent diamond often symbolizes brilliance, perfection, light, luxury, refinement. It's the gemstone version of elegance. A black diamond feels different. It feels primal. It feels geological. It feels like a stone that remembers pressure. It doesn't seduce with sparkle. It commands attention through presence. That may sound poetic, but in the field, it matters. Because black diamonds challenge the human instinct to equate value with obvious beauty. They force you to ask a deeper question. What if rarity doesn't look rare at first? What if value hides behind darkness? What if the stone that looks the least impressive is the one with the most extreme story? That is why black diamonds fascinate people so deeply. They are not just gemstones. They are contradictions. They are the kind of stones that seem to say, "You only understand me if you slow down." And maybe that is why they're missed. Because most people do not slow down. They scan, they assume, they compare against expectations. They move on, but the people who make meaningful finds pause. They notice the stone that seems slightly too dense. The black fragment that doesn't quite match the others. The surface that responds with restrained luster instead of dead flatness. The shape that refuses the common patterns. That is how the real hunt begins. Not with certainty, with suspicion. And suspicion in gemstone hunting is a gift. So if you ever find yourself staring at a rough black stone in the wild, what should you actually remember? First, forget sparkle. That expectation alone will cause you to miss what matters. If you are waiting for the classic diamond flash, you may walk right past the most interesting stone in the area. Second, watch the light. Not glamorous brilliance. Not jewelry store fire. Watch how the surface behaves. Does it look flat and lifeless? Or does it show a strange, controlled, heavy luster? Does it seem to hold light in patches? Does it react in a way that feels denser than the stones around it? Third, study the texture. Does it look compact, tough, resistant, compressed? Or does it look glassy, flaky, layered, brittle, or too neatly structured in the wrong way? Fourth, study the shape. Is it elongated and strongly grooved like many black tourmalines? Does it look stretched, directional, and striated? Or is it more irregular, more compact, more massive, more stubborn in its form? Fifth, and this may be the most important of all, study the setting. What kind of ground are you in? What kind of rock is nearby? Does the geology make sense? Is the environment telling a believable story, or are you forcing one? Because if the landscape and the stone disagree, the landscape is often right. And finally, remember the most important truth in this entire video. Field clues are not proofs. They are the beginning of investigation. That distinction separates serious gemstone hunters from people who only collect dramatic guesses. A responsible finder does not rush to declare victory. They observe, they compare, they test, they stay humble. And when a stone truly seems unusual, they seek proper confirmation. That mindset will save you from disappointment. But more importantly, it will make you better. Because expertise is not built on dramatic claims. It is built on disciplined attention. And maybe that is the real secret hidden inside the mystery of black diamonds. Not every important thing in nature arrives with obvious beauty. Not every rare stone announces itself with sparkle. Not every valuable discovery looks valuable at first glance. Sometimes it arrives as a dark, rough shape half buried in dust. Something everyone else ignored. Something almost too ordinary to matter. Until the right person pauses. Until the right person notices. Until the right person looks twice. That is the difference. And maybe that is what it really means to spot a black diamond before anyone else. Not that you saw something magical, but that you refused to dismiss something mysterious. Because in gemstone hunting, and maybe in life itself, what changes everything is often not the thing that shines the brightest, but the thing everyone else walks past. So the next time you see a rough black stone sitting quietly among broken ground and forgotten rock, don't just ask whether it looks valuable. Ask the better question: is it just another black stone? Or is it the one everyone missed?